The reason that I asked these two to be here today is so that we can have a dialogue, because I have never in my life found a time when people felt so powerless, so overwhelmed by the scope of the problem, so confused about what to do, and so frightened that they didn't want to take in the negativity that was all around them.
I don't know if all of you watched the Kavanaugh hearings, but there was an event that broke my heart in it. 3 women in the elevator accosting Jeff Flake, screaming at him, "Look at me when I talk to you." And these girls were my sisters. I mean, I immediately felt for them. I understood what they felt. But I wanted to reach through and say, you're indulging your anger. You're not aware of how you're being seen in the Midwest. You're not aware of how you're being seen by blue-collar people who don't have the entitlement to get this angry. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is the way that we can practice compassion in the field of political protest. And the first place it starts is by your taking a decision not to allow politics to take your state of mind. And people have forgotten that a protest is an invitation to join another world. It's an invitation to join a world that is more just and more equitable and more harmonious than this one. Well, who would accept an invitation while they were being shouted at?
I spent about just less than 5 years in the United States Marine Corps. And as my kids and my wife can attest, you never really leave the Marine Corps. When I was stationed as an infantry officer in Coyote, I was convinced I was trying to save the world from Peter Coyote. I swear to God, I'm the only Buddhist with the Marine Corps hymn as a ringtone.
This is the first time tonight that I've ever heard him say he was a Buddhist. In all the time we've known each other, he's insisted he's not a Buddhist, and then just gone on behaving like a Buddhist. I think of Dick as the Marine of compassion. I mean, it's exhausting keeping up with him. And Dick is like a people person. One person after another, seeking the opportunity to bring them joy, relieve suffering, and he does it in the most unremitting fashion possible. I'm instructed by it daily.
For 27 years, Ann and I have been going to Kathmandu, Nepal. We land in the afternoon, and my first stop is a fruit stand where I get bananas and oranges, and I take them down to their Chirpati home for the disabled. Where in the society of Nepal, if you're disabled, you're kind of shutted off to the side. You're rarely visited, and you're thought to be nearly like an untouchable. And the star of the show was a dear friend by the name of Mina. Mina was born with no legs. Her feet came out from the bottom of her trunk, and she had no upper arms. Her elbows were attached to her shoulder. But she's very bright, very intelligent, wonderful sense of humor, and she was the leader of the pack. So they're all out there to greet me on this particular visit. I bought each one of the women a barrette and each one of the men a comb. It was like I'd given them a Rolex. After greeting each other and a few magic tricks, I escorted Mina to the female quarters. I was sitting on Mina's bed. She was sitting next to me. She weighed 42 pounds. So I looked over to Mina and I said, I'm going up to Tengboche Monastery for 10 days, and when I come back, I want to get you anything in the world that you want, period. We had known her for, at that time, probably 10 years. You could put everything that Mina owned on Peter's chair. And after about 10, 15 seconds, she kind of took a little bit of a start. I said, okay, Mina, what is it you want more than anything else in the world? Because you're going to get it. I'll never forget her response. She looked at me and said, you know, Papa, really, I've got everything I could ever want. Just promise me you're coming back. And that's where our hearts are. You know, that's where this longing that we all have is to be acknowledged and to feel that we matter and to feel that we care and that people will come back and that we have a sense of community and that we're not outcasts, we're not out there on the side.
So let me just connect that for a minute to what Laura was talking about. And we need to discipline ourselves to remember that every act we make toward even an opponent, even an antagonist, is a piece of theater that is being viewed by that opponent and being viewed by other people. And if we want to create theater that will invite people into another world, the first thing we have to do is realize that we're not different from them. So you and me and Donald Trump and Hitler and Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama were all just these little waves rising up into form for a while. There's no good guys and bad guys. We are human beings. We're like radios turned to the human frequency. And anything that any human can feel or experience can come through us. If we know that, then we can be on guard for our negative feelings. And we can make sure I don't let envy or competition or anger leak. So we have to start by realizing there's one universe. There's no place to stand outside of it. This is where we have to make the world that we want to have. And the person you're talking about has different experiences. And your job is to find out why he or she thinks that way. And I promise you, if you do that, you may not come to agreement, but that person will not feel judged by you, and they will drop their defenses. And from that neutral place, there's always the possibility to move forward together or find some avenue of agreement. Those are the ways in which I think of compassion, in which I try to put them into practice.
I think we're born compassionate, kind, loving, perfect, etc., etc. That's our heart. But on the way from our heart to our mind is all of this stuff. A compassion act becomes too far away. It becomes too time-consuming. It's too health risky. It's too expensive. I'll never make a difference. And our mind starts to play this tape over and over again, and suddenly we have either diluted or destroyed our finest thinking. I've heard the old saw, oh, Jim's such a nice fellow. You've never heard him say about a bad word about anybody. I think, what's Jim thinking? You know, how could Jim be so dumb? Some people deserve to be outed.
When I'm talking about protest, I'm out there because I'm angry. But if I express that anger, I'm just contributing to the right wing's anger. I'm just throwing another piece of shit in the drinking water. But if I hold on to the dignity that the civil rights marchers showed, if I say I'm willing to die to do this, you will perceive my seriousness. And you'll know I'm not kidding. And you'll know that I'm playing for keeps. And it will have an impression on you. We can't stop what arises, but we can stop ourselves from acting on it. The first thing to do is start promulgating the idea that we deserve people who feel compassionate about our country, who feel compassionate about what we're going through, who feel compassionate about our agitation and our sense of impotence. And so this is why I'm talking about it, because the forms of our life together and our government can reflect our highest intentions or not. And we still haven't lost the game. So we have to redouble our efforts. And that's compassion in action.
Let me give you one example that I promise will work for anybody in this room. I promise you it'll work if you try it, okay? If you have a bee that is in your hand and can sting you multiple times, you cannot squeeze that bee to death. It's going to find a recess to avoid your fit, your clench, right? The only way to free yourself from the stinging is to let it go. And I try as often as I can. I fail often, but I make more good decisions than I used to.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everybody.